I know overall violent crime was down. Can you just talk a little bit about, summarize last year for me?
So, there's some successes that we had and some challenges. From the successes, I'll start with that. A reduction of almost 14% in total violent crime, which equates to about a little over 1,500 less violent crime victims than we had. A lot of that due to the aggravated assault that went down 18%, which equates to a little over 1,300 less victims of aggravated assault. Robbery went down almost 8%. Again, we had the least amount of victims, total victims, and we had the least amount of violent crime incidents that we've had in 5 years. We saw gun crime go down as well. But then there's the fact that we had more murders this year, after 2 years of reduction in murder. Although I'm happy that we reduced total violent crime for the third year in a row, I'm certainly not pleased with the fact that murder went up. But really, as you look at our murders, and it's important for the community to know, and why we need to work so hard with our community and our officers, is the fact when you delve down into the murder numbers, there's some statistics that pop out. And as an example, 70% of our murder victims were involved in either criminal activity or some other type of high-risk behavior. Over the majority of our victims and suspects knew each other in some way. And then 60% of our murders occurred inside some sort of apartment complex or inside a residence. And so why that's important is because these aren't necessarily random acts of violence that are occurring. And so what that says really to me is we need to double down on working with our community and really giving people hope and giving a pathway to people otherwise involved in a life of violent crime, that there's a better way to live your life, because you're on borrowed time if you continue this life. And so doing our best to reinvest in people and places, which is something that's part of our crime plan in our focused deterrence model. And then additionally, we need to ensure that the police department continues to be proactive to take this criminal element off of our streets. Because we now see, because as the numbers bear out, we see that the criminal element either commits the crime or becomes victims themselves. And so we need to really concentrate on those two things moving into the new year. And so those are some of the successes we have, but certainly some of the challenges that we face as well.
When you say apartment complexes, why apartment complexes are seeing so much violent crime?
Well, oftentimes in an apartment complex, it's somewhat clandestine. It's hidden from the general public, so to speak, where, as we're driving around and doing other things, and certainly we need to have more presence on there, which is the second part of our crime plan, which our plastic investigations tries to deter. But really, it's out of sight oftentimes, and so that's oftentimes criminal activity will occur out of sight, and so that could be a challenge. And so we certainly need to work closer with our apartments and managers and ownership of apartments to do our very best to ensure that they're as safe as possible, having camera systems, using technology, doing other things, security and all those other things that we need to work closely to maybe able to reduce that from a presence perspective. But it really does also come down that we need to reinvest in people and places. I say this all the time, but there's areas in the city that look hopeless. And when you live in hopeless situations, you do hopeless things that we have to respond to. And so we can't lose sight of the fact that, yes, enforcement's incredibly important, but investing in people and places is just as important for the long term to get out of the situation we're in.
How do we invest in those places when sometimes it feels like it is a cycle of violence and poverty and things like that? How do you invest in those places?
Well, you talk to any criminologist, and I'll tell you this, that violent crime is rooted in poverty. It's rooted in lack of education, joblessness, the family structure. And so none of those things have anything really to do with police work. They have to do with quality of life. And so we need to infuse positive quality of life in areas. There is no question about it. There is no city that's going to arrest their way into a safer city. Investments and reinvestments need to be made. And so that is a priority, and I know it's a priority of our city. I know it's a priority of my city manager to really look at areas that have not been invested in and invest in those areas and in people. and so I just came back a couple weeks ago with one of my partners, Anton Lucky, from Urban Specialists, and we went to Tennessee Colony and went to the prison and spoke to individuals, some of which that are going to get paroled back into Dallas, and giving them a conversation of that we're not going to tolerate violent crime, but we also want to give you a pathway for success to live a better life. And so those are some of the things that we need to do on the long term, in addition to ensuring that police officers are proactive in taking that criminal element off the street today.
Yeah, I've spoken with Anton many times before. Works a lot with youth. Can you talk about youth numbers in those murders that we saw, the homicides that we saw?
We obviously, one life is too many. We saw too many of our youth involved in violent crime, in incidents of violence or murder. But again, they are also part, not all, but also part in that percentage of being involved in high-risk behavior or other criminal activity. And so we need to continue, and I've had conversations with our DISD superintendent, and Stephanie and I have actually spoken about the fact that we're going to work hard this year together, really to give individuals a pathway. If 100 aggravated assaults are not committed by 100 different people, it's a very few percentage that are committing the violence. And so if we concentrate on those individuals, recognize them, and give them the message that we're not going to tolerate it, but at the same time, we want to help you succeed, we need to do that. And obviously, the earlier we can do it, the better. And so we need to continue to do that before they become adults. The famous quote of it's better to build strong children than to fix broken men is 100% accurate. And so collectively as a community, we need to do that, really, from the long term. There are no quick fixes. We need to start to see the results years from now, to see those successes.
Is it concerning? Is it concerning to you that we're starting January with 5 homicides already?
Well, what concerns me the most is, again, the last 2 homicides we had. One was a known drug dealer, and the other one happened inside a residence. So yet again, we're seeing that. Obviously, nothing is set. In our first quarters for the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of violence. That is a point of emphasis. But we're 4 days in, and looking at where we're at for the numbers last year, we certainly hope to improve on that. Again, what we can do is when we look at the numbers, we need to control what we can control. And so moving from that, the way I look at it right now, we're 4 days in, we're 1 above what we were last year. And so as I tell my officers every day is win our day. If we win our day, we'll win the week. If we win the week, if we win more weeks, we'll win the month. And if we win more months, we'll win the year. And that means less people being injured and being either killed or victims of violent crime in the city of Dallas.